Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours with my ear hanging out. It's Saturday morning. No, I'm paying attention to that. If you see a little link down below, you'll see you can click on that in YouTube and you'll go to Zoom. And once you're in Zoom, you'll see another little link. Click on that and you'll end up in Mukana. And Mukana is where you become the producer. You are driving the questions. So the whole conversation is based on what you ask, what you vote on. And we don't really have any other plan. So I'm just warning you that it'll be a real short show if you don't participate. So as producers, if you're watching, by the way, you are the producer. You're really driving that show. So pay attention to the songs, the questions. They're kind of like songs. The questions as they come in. Ask those questions. If everybody asks 3 questions a week, it would be pretty busy. And then vote on the questions. Don't forget to vote on them because it does make a difference as to we spend more time on the front half of the hour. We'll handle only a handful of questions in the front half of the hour. And then we continually accelerate until we get to the end of the hour. So if you really want a certain question to be a little bit more time spent with it, make sure to vote that question up. If you think that you could be part of a more in-depth part of the community, becoming a panelist, then you can get here as early as 6 just to check out your kit, but you need to be here by 6:40 a.m. Pacific Standard Time for the mic check. That's when we make sure that everybody's ready to go. And so it's really important to be there by then. 7 o'clock is when we really start. General Q&A for the first hour. And then the second hour is something we're going to spend a little bit more time on. And so the first, second and third hour in this case is education. So we'll be doing that at 8 o'clock. And then at 10 o'clock, Nick Justishin from Drexel University will be here. And he'll be talking, we're kind of delving further into MetaHuman. So we're going to talk about how to get the MetaHuman out of MetaHuman, how to get the character out of MetaHuman and into Unreal. Next week, we're going to talk about how to attach your phone so that you can drive the face of a MetaHuman with your phone live. Be pretty cool. So it's a 2-part series there, and we'll keep on doing other things Unreal related as we move forward. And then we're going to shift gears after that. So 11 to so we basically 10 to 11 we're going to do that with Nick. There's a little bit of a space between 11 and noon. And noon, and we're all going to cook together. So basically, it's cooking, but it's also really just collaborative learning. I mean, so cooking is just an easy one because we all have kitchens, or most of us have kitchens. And so we're going to cook today. We have a test kitchen at noon, and we're going to be making a flank steak, a stuffed flank steak. Is going to be the test kitchen today. You can watch. If you don't want to make it, you can just watch us make it and watch us sit there and flail around. There's rumors that the chef who did the recipe may show up. So it should be kind of cool. That's kind of the next step of what we're working on there. And then we open up the comms at 3 o'clock. And then at 5 o'clock, we have Matt in the kitchen. Now, Nate, who you might have seen at the end, he may or may not. It'll be this week or next week. He may or may not call the show. We'll see. I don't want to put too much pressure on Nate, but we're talking about it. So within the next week or two, I think we're going to hopefully get Nate in to tell me what to do and be frustrated with the fact that I can't do it as fast as he can think about it. So we'll I'll try to keep up. Anyway, so it should get a lot more interesting this evening. I would highly recommend checking it out. All right, Bill, we got any questions?
We do have questions in a good little early group here for Saturday. We start with Scott Mueller of Clinton Corners, New York. And Scott says, whoops. There we go. Scott says, a question about Alex's diagram for the signal flow from a talent meeting going into a webinar. What does having a Zoom room add in terms of functionality as opposed to just having a standard user on a B-Link in that breakout room, pinning the camera and sending it to the ATEM? Note it's for the 720p. Can I just join and leave each breakout room with my portal?
First of all, you probably only need to have a portal jump into the meeting and everything will go to 720p. I don't think it needs to do that for every breakout room, but the functionality, or guys, am I correct there?
It does. Yeah. Breakout rooms need to have the portal join. It's almost like a separate meeting separate meeting ID. It's
a meeting like inside of a meeting. Got it. Okay. So, and then the second thing, the functionality we get is, number one, is we have more control over how the signals come out of the computer. So once we go in, there's a little bit of first screen, second screen, and you don't have as much control over where everything shows up if you're just in a regular meeting. If you've jumped in, for instance, there's a whole bunch of interface on one screen that's considered your main screen. I think it's almost always considered screen one for a meeting. And then the second screen, outputs. And so you don't have but with a Zoom room, you can say, if this many people are in, this is where these screens are going. They're always going to be the same. And so the Zoom room gives you that, gives you more control. And one of the, and the second thing is it gives you, for at least us, it gives us less interface. We only end up with a little connection thing when we're done in that room that outputs it. Oftentimes now we're also taking a Zoom room and letting someone present. So if they have a slide deck or something else they want to show, they can present it to, when they hit presentation, share screen, we pull those in as two separate screens, which you could do in a meeting. But again, we've had a lot of frustration with being able to control it the way we want. Finally, and those are the big reasons, because the reason we do separate rooms is simply because we want separate audio. I mean, audio is the most important piece of that puzzle, is that we have control over the audio pipeline, so that we can now send in custom returns, as well as being able to isolate their audio in our mixer. So, but I think the big thing with the Zoom room is that it has allowed, and when we got into it using Zoom rooms, we'd get 1080p, not just 720p, but only in Zoom rooms and only in point-to-point. I think that's loosened up a little bit, but it's still, I think it's easier to get 1080p from a Zoom room, like to make that request, than it is to get a meeting pushed to 720p. Like to have all your meetings okayed to 1080p, I think is harder. Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, one other thing that Greg Gibson found is that using the controller on an iPad, it's super fast to pin people too. So it's nice to have that interface where it's just like, poof. So if you got 100 people, you could hit them fast. Zoom OSC would be the other way to do that if you didn't want to deal with the controller. Plus, the controller is a web interface that you can assign to other people to use. So you can have somebody else in your group across the country pinning people, and it's all built in.
And that's a great feature. Unfortunately, we found that the web interface, for us at least, even up to the last couple of weeks, has been a little buggy. So we find that we can flip things and tell it to do things, and it's not doing them. But if we go into the controller and do it, it does it immediately. So things like camera control and a couple other things we found that we can't get to on the web page isn't responsive. So we just have to be careful if we do it on the web that you don't have as much control. I do wish in the camera adjustment, I wish that the controller was a little less twitchy. You know that when you're trying to reframe someone with a Brio, there's like a notch down, notch down, notch down, but a lot of times it skips over, and you're just like, just cool your heels, buddy. like just one hit is good. We don't need to go too fast. So that it's auto scroll is a little messy. Next question.
Comes from Perry Miller, and Perry is in Chapel Hill. Says, when using an iPad Pro in landscape mode, can you provide suggestions on how to achieve eye contact?
Rupert?
So I think about getting maybe some printed silhouette of a head or some printed target kind of pattern, and mount it slightly behind the iPad, but the closest you can get to the center to be closest to the camera, and then try and focus on that picture.
And I believe the iPad also has the disadvantage that it still pillars. So if you're coming in from an iOS device, I believe both the iPad and the iPhone pillar. What I mean is there's two black strips going down either side. The reason for that is that the sensor is the size of a sensor on both the on the iOS devices. It's not a 16:9 sensor. It's a closer to, I don't remember what it is, a 2x3 or 3x2 sensor, I think. And then what happens is when you're using FaceTime and pretty much everything other than Zoom, it just crops it. It just crops off the top and scales up, and we're fine. like that is your picture. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, Zoom in its infinite knowledge has never done that. They always want to show you the full frame, and so we end up with pillars for no apparent reason. And so it's a real bummer that they just won't scale. Just scale up just little, so that we could get that full raster. So that's the thing that keeps us we avoid iOS devices like the plague on Zoom, just because of those pillars. Go ahead, Bill.
This is going to sound stupid, but it actually works. Back when I was learning radio, they said, listen, you're not talking to everybody, you're talking to one person. So literally cut a page out of a magazine with somebody on it, put it behind the microphone, and just talk to them. It was to get you to project out rather than at. And you can do the same exact thing with a computer's camera. Cut out a little picture of somebody's face that you like, stick it right over the camera, and then just train yourself to talk to them. Oddly, it works.
The unfortunate thing about it when it comes to video is that, and it's the reason that, for instance, Errol Morris used the Interatron for a long time, is that we actually have and we didn't know this until we did the Interatron work. So we had a client, Salesforce wanted to use it. This is 2008, 2009. They really wanted to do Interatron, and we had never done it before, so we had to kind of figure it out. And the thing that we noticed, there's two things that we noticed that were very unusual in this process. One is that you do this weird thing as a human being with other people around you, that you mirror their face. So when their eyebrows go up, you're likely to have your eyebrows go up. When there's this weird thing that you do, and it's not, you don't always do it, but you do this thing where a lot of people, especially people who are pretty empathetic or really into, like really paying attention to the other person, they'll sit there and they'll have these really subtle mirrors that they'll do with the person, and it's part of the communication. And when we don't see them, we don't do it, and it's a funny thing because we couldn't figure out what was different. It took us a long time. We had to watch both videos next to each other to realize that there's this really unconscious thing that's going on between the faces that only occurs when we're actually looking at them. And so that's why the Interatron is so much more powerful. And it happens when someone's looking off screen like this and they're being interviewed, they're still looking at a person, and that person, and it's part of what makes an interviewer actually really good, is they do things that will pull that person out, but that what they're doing is actually creating facial reactions on that person based on how they respond, whether it's a positive response or a negative response. So for instance, an interviewer can back an interviewee into a corner by giving them just angry responses, but it'll change the nature of their face as well. And so the Interatron, that's why we became obsessed with the Interatron for a long time, had tons and tons of teleprompters as a result, is because it actually changes that. The other thing about it is that we also noticed, and this is like a really minor thing or a really subtle thing, is that your eyes will converge on that screen when there's a person on the other side. And so they'll just pull in, and they actually act differently. And so it makes the conversation feel much more alive when you put someone in front of a teleprompter. When both people are in front of a teleprompter looking at each other through glass, the conversation has, and this isn't something that a viewer will notice, but it's something that they will feel. That there's this, you're right in the middle of a conversation, and there's just a touch of liveliness that you lose when you try to have something where you're looking away from them and listening to it. And we're used to it as viewers, because when you watch TV, I've been on TV, and when you're one of those people in the little window that's there, you're looking at a camera. There's no screen. You're listening to the conversation and talking to the camera. But when you see the difference, once you see the difference, it's hard to go back. It's like one of those things, like once you feel that thing, you always want that, and everything else you're doing is a compromise. So it's just something to kind of remember. And it's not that you have to do it all the time. And Bill's suggestion is exactly what I was taught in radio, and it works perfectly. Like it works really well. So that when you don't have that's the thing to do. And same thing that Rupert mentioned. But when you can get that face to face, and that's what the iOS devices don't do very well. Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, it's wild as you're saying that. Like here's my view that I'm staring into a 24-inch teleprompter, which it's a straight up luxury. I mean, like this, being able to look down the barrel and see what you're talking about, every little nuance. I find myself nodding like you're nodding right now. It's pretty wild. I wish that there was a trade show where everybody could get this experience to feel what you're talking about, because it's pretty cool.
It's a different experience and you get more energy out of it, or more or less, if the other person on the other side is a dead weight. So we've had some people who interview through the Interatron, and we literally go back to the client and go, that person should never do that again. Because the other thing is when you do the Interatron, you can't look down at notes. Like you can't, as the interviewer, you have to have something upside. You can't be going like this while the person's answering the question, because people who are used to doing like radio interviews or whatever will go down like this, and they'll be looking for the next question. They'll be writing notes about what they're going to ask next, and they're going to do all this other stuff. You can't do that, because it actually just is soul sucking for the person on the other side. To have someone like not paying attention, like able to pay attention and not pay attention, is not something that adds energy or creates a better interview. It's the interviewer. I think people don't realize, even if they're never on camera, super important position, and who they are as far as their energy makes or breaks a lot of these interviews. Next question.
Comes to us from Todd Reynolds in North Adams, Massachusetts. And Todd says, if I wanted to invite someone on a panel to cut my music live stream over my local ATEM Mini Pro over the internet remotely, would they need anything other than its IP? And he's a cloud noob and says, thanks for addressing the question.
So you're going to need a couple of things really to do it this successfully. You're going to need control of the ATEM and then visibility of the multi-view to see exactly what you're cutting. And to get the ATEM, I mean, you could run the software locally and then come up with some either port forwarding thing to get into it remotely, or use a VPN would be the next thing. But that's only going to give you control over the ATEM. You need some way to backhaul the multi-view. You could kind of kludge that a couple of ways, but maybe the easier thing would be to maybe like team viewer to the remote end and then pipe the multi-view into a local computer there, and then try and get both up on the screen at the same time. Frame rate's going to be a little bit laggy and things, but that might be one way around it.
And we've used Zoom for that very successfully. So Zoom and Hangouts, we've used, not Hangouts anymore, but back in the day. And the latency is pretty low. And so you can actually pop those, especially if you have, the thing you do have to have is a 720p minimum resolution on your Zoom. You can't be 360. So you need to have a Zoom room join or get a portal or whatever, just make sure that you get to 720. 1080p, at 1080p, it looks perfect. And someone can do it. And you're still dealing with, I mean, it's not, I wouldn't cut sports with it, but you're only 200 milliseconds behind. And to Rupert's point, then you just need a VPN. And then I know that the guys are experimenting with OSC over SRT is another way to make that work that wouldn't require any of those things. So Andy's been kind of really working down that path with at Liminal to make that work, and that will revolutionize what we're doing. Yeah, go ahead, TJ.
Yeah, I was going to just say, you may want to touch base with Victor Cajiao. That's what him, Andy Carluccio, and I are practicing with right now.
Yeah. So Victor right now is the sharp end of that stick. So of figuring out exactly, and our goal flat out is that we want to empower artists like you to be able to do your thing without having to deal with any of the technology. So, our goal is to get to a point where eventually we can send you a kit that would give us the capability of doing HDR surround from your house without you having to do anything other than turn the stuff on. And so we're trying to, get to that point. We're not there yet, but we're building, like, designing kits around the idea. Talak.
Yeah, I just want to +1 on the Streamweaver tool. Mm-hmm. It gets you that OSC control into your remote location, and it's one less layer of internet wonk.
Yeah, I think the Streamweaver is going to be Streamweaver is going to be the solution.
Been using it for a month and it really works well.
Yeah.
Oh, I will buy 2 instances of Streamweaver today.
Yeah, we're still working on it, but I think we're getting there. Go ahead, Leo.
Yeah, I was going to just add to the fact that I think the long term is to move more and more of these things into the cloud. Some of the stuff that the guys are looking at and putting the movement of elements and cutting into the cloud, depending on where you want to do. If your output is going to be locally, then that's maybe different. But if your output is going to be into the cloud or it's going to be remote, then doing stuff like the stuff that guys looked at on doing vMix in the cloud makes a lot of sense.
I mean, the big trip up right now that I'm still working through for the cloud, video's easy. I'm not worried about that. It's the audio pipelines. Like, how do I build really complex audio pipelines in the cloud is not something that I've seen where anyone's shown me anything where I go, oh, that'll fix everything. Like, I haven't, and I am notorious for building really, or at least inspiring really complex audio pipelines, because I just feel like between the comms and the audio and everything else, it makes the show. And then I'm trying to make it even more complex because I'm trying to pull oftentimes, 16 or more stems out of the location to do what I want to do with it. So yeah, so for me, until I see better audio, that's the thing that keeps me out of the cloud. Next question.
Comes from Marlon Leo Mendel here in the panel from London, England. And he says, I have lots of home lights and other animation equipment from different providers. What is the recommendation for one app or system to rule them all? So universal control.
Go ahead, Rupert, and then John.
So I'd recommend you check out a guy on YouTube and his channel, Jonathan Oxer, and his channel Superhouse. He's got a whole back catalog of hacking together all these things and integrating all kinds of stuff. I'll put some links in. Also, Home Assistant is quite a good open framework to build all your stuff together. It allows you to get into basically a lot of the underlying technologies like Z-Wave or Zigbee. I think the Philips Hue stuff is based on one of those, or maybe yet another one. A lot of these things you can actually blow in different firmware to, gives you a whole load more control. But at the end of the day, also keep in mind that if you've got a whole bunch of this stuff, maybe think about setting up a dedicated VLAN to put all your IoT stuff on, just in case. But the Superhouse TV is a great channel. I'll put links in.
Go ahead, John.
So I'm going to go with the favorite Mickey answer of it depends. Really depends on what equipment you have as to how well they can integrate, and how well, even if you do have firmware and such that you can upgrade, a lot of things aren't designed to integrate with other products. However, for those that can integrate and work together, I really like Homebridge, and I've been using that myself. That allows me to control non-iOS controllable things through HomeKit, and I put it on a Raspberry Pi, and I have it just sitting here running in the background, and allows me to open, say, my garage from HomeKit. It allows me to turn on lights that aren't controllable by HomeKit, and it's just been really usable. The only thing I've had trouble with are cameras. They seem to want to stream continuously, so be careful about that.
Go, JJ.
1 year ago, I would have said Wink, but absolutely not now. After what happened at the beginning of COVID, now Habitat. Habitat's really great because it takes all the different kinds of protocols that exist out there, Z-Wave, the Zigbee units. It is ubiquitous and it speaks to everything, and you can centralize it all. And to Rupert, exactly, I would follow that. Put everything on a different VLAN because it's very chatty. It talks a lot in the background, so you want all your home automation in a separate VLAN, and then leak that route into your controller and have your controller on your local system. Or something like Alex would use, which is a professional system, but that's crazy.
I have to admit, I'm about to rebuild my studio, and for me, probably going to just be all DMX, like some version of DMX for everything. I just like it. I've played with, I got so many different lights and so many different controllers for all the lights and everything else, and I'm like, I'm going to need to program all of this and just have it all, just work. So anyway, I'll probably bend Tlock's here to figure that all out. All right, next question.
Comes to us from JJ McKenna here in the panel from Santa Venetia, California. What makes the venerable, I have to say that, SM58 such a seemingly effective and universal microphone?
I always think of it as like the SR71 of microphones. So it's just maybe not quite as flashy, but it's just an amazingly, I mean, the fact that it was designed in is it the 60s or the 50s? Mid 60s. So it's just amazing. I mean, and it's just indestructible. Like we've used it in so many environments. We've had it submerged in water for unfortunately a long time. Comes right back out and is like, yeah, sure, I got you. So it's just an amazing, like an amazing mic. I don't know if we've ever broken one. Like we've done some horrible things to it. I don't think we've ever got to a point where I was like, oh, that one won't work anymore. Go ahead, Bill.
So I would think that the top three characteristics, which are still here today from the very first issue, durability, number one, because when you saw Roger Daltrey of The Who in the 60s put one on the end of a 10-foot mic cord, swing it, pull it back and scream into it from an inch away. It worked every night consistently on a tour, and people respected that. The polar pattern, it is as cardioid as you get out of a dynamic, so that you can literally stick it a quarter inch from your mouth and it's going to articulate reasonably well. And it's not the most transparent mic in the world, but it is rock solid like that. And then the third thing after those two, I've forgotten, but it's, just the quality of its sound. It's not a bad microphone. And to be able to do those other two things and still sound decent, that's a tall order. And boy, did they nail it.
Yeah. Jeffrey.
So SM, by the way, is studio microphone. That's what it stands for. They have the SM57 came out first in the mid 60s, and then they just basically put a grill on it and became the SM58. There's three versions of it. You have one with a switch, which is a SM58S, and then you have the SM58, and I'm using the Beta 58, and the Beta 58 is a super cardioid microphone as opposed to a cardioid microphone, has a lot more off-axis rejection. I use it, of course, behind my drum set, so I don't get too much snare and toms into the mix. And once again, durable. It's usually in the front of the house, so it becomes the rock star of the microphones. Everybody is using it, and it's based on the Eurodyne pattern, which was broadcast microphones address systems.
And to be clear, I believe that the SM7B and the SM7V are both the same.
Well,
mic.
they sell boatloads of
mic.
the 57, which is the same mic
element.
essentially without the ball on
Right.
top of it.
So they're all the same element. Like they're just with different housing, which does make a difference. But it's not. They didn't redesign the element for it. Go ahead, Craig.
A couple things that I've found out about them, and specifically with the 57 version, is just how they were able to market them, and the whole point of how the 57 became the mic for the president, of the American president. And part of the reason was because they, and I forgot what branch of the government is that deals, it's part of the military, I think, that deals with the microphones and the PA system for the president, if I'm right. But when they put out a request for equipment, there's a whole bunch of companies that said, well, we'll give you this. And Shure said, this is how much this will cost you. And because they can't accept, because that branch can't accept free things and can't endorse stuff, they went with the Shure product because it was something that, here's the pricing. So it was a fun little thing that I found out about. But because of that, it's become just, you see it everywhere with that. And like Bill was saying with Roger Daltrey and everywhere you look on rock and roll stages, they're everywhere. The other interesting thing that I found out about them recently was that they actually have been subtly continually improving it ever since it came out. It's not the same microphone actually that was released in the 60s. It has been improved, and they make subtle changes just as they get things back from use feedback. Even apparently the paint on it has been changed regularly to improve it so that it doesn't dissolve under people's sweat when they're using them on stage.
Yeah, and the great thing is that while it had great marketing and everything else at the beginning, obviously what it proves is doing something simple really, really well can go a long way. Like without having to, not trying to make it something. Now they have it branched out, the SM7Bs, SM7V, those are branching out using the same technology that they had, just making it a little bit different. But it's amazing how that product has become just so, I know very few people, ironically, I say this, but I couldn't find one in my garage today. I think they're down in the office. I have one. Mine are down in the office at the moment. But I was like, how can I not have I used to have, 30 or 40 of them laying around. I know there's one in my garage if I just keep spelunking. I just haven't found it. All right, go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, I think what I like about the SM58, and mostly I'm in live sound with churches and stuff. We've used a lot of different types. Beta 87 for a while was like the one to go to, but I actually replaced all my Beta 87s at one point back to SM58 just because they're really good to just, first of all, even if you have kind of a failing cable and you're plugging it in and out a lot, you don't have the pop of the phantom power. But also just to throw to everybody, they all know kind of how to use it. It's the same thing. There's better mics out there for sure, no doubt. But as far as just, a utility mic that is decent, it's a really good mic. I think that's,
by the way,
I use it.
We train people if they're speaking in front of a lot of folks. We train them to take the mic, touch your chin, and pull out 1 inch. Like that is to us, like
I say two fingers. That's what I basically say.
Yeah, but I say just touch the chin with your mic, and then just pull out 1 inch, and that's where if you hold it there, it will sound with open speakers. It will work every time. and that's that's our little trick. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, I have less than glowing review about the SM58, and the reason is that I've had 2 go bad. I've had 2 failures. Now, I'm going to send them to Bob Nagy, who has a ham radio microphone repair business, and if he can fix those, he's into a new line of business. So we'll see.
I'm just saying, as someone who's owned so many of them, I don't know if it's them. It might be you. I mean, you might have like a vortex. You have a microphone vortex going on.
I can't get this. I can't get it to work today. I've got an Zoom L8 hooked up to an SM58 hooked up to a Mac Mini. There may be a problem between the L8 and the Mac Mini.
Man, if something went wrong in my chain, the last thing I would look at is my SM58. Go ahead, Tommy. Can't hear you, Tommy.
To go on with what Tim said, it's a very forgiving mic, and everyone is familiar with them that has spent any time in front of a microphone. They see it, they know what they have to do, and if you're a little off axis or something, it'll still pick you up fine.
Yeah. Go ahead, JJ.
I would say that probably Paul's the only person here who may have taken his into a live volcano.
Yeah, exactly.
The second though,
when he was a goat herder in the 80s by a volcano in a small. Pacific. I wouldn't be surprised if Paul said that. I would totally take it as gospel. Anyway, go ahead, JJ.
Yeah, but how much then would you attribute the SM58 to the too frequently seen, and it horrifies me, even though I'm not a sound guy, the mic drop? Like, is that the reason why people drop mics?
Well, because it'll survive it. Yeah, probably. If you dropped a lot of other mics, you would they wouldn't make it. Next question.
Frederick Jepson in Munich, Germany is up next with my ATEM Mini Extreme is stretching MacBook Pro input, the MacBook Pro input vertically about 20%. Circles become ovals. If I plug the MacBook directly to the monitor, circles are round. Everything is set to 1080p. How to troubleshoot?
Go ahead, TJ.
So the only thing I could think of is when you plug in the ATEM into your computer, open up the system preferences displays section, and it'll put up the information about each monitor on that monitor. And so if you have another monitor hooked into your ATEM so you can see the preview, look at it and just make sure it doesn't say scaled resolution. That would be the only thing I could think of to make sure that you're not scaling it somehow to some weird oddball size ratio.
Go ahead, Leo.
Yeah, taking it further from what TJ's saying, the Mac isn't always 1080p. That's not its native resolution in a lot of environments. And I have this a lot because I have to play around here in the UK because we're on a different frequency. There's a couple of plugins that you can get, one of which is called Switch Res X. And Switch Res X actually you can put on a Mac, and it will actually give you much finer detail of what the Mac is actually pushing out.
And one other thing is that I guess my question will be, make sure that is it going through anything? The MacBook Pro, does it go through a what could possibly screw it up is if you put it through a distribution box or anything else in between it. It'll ID as the wrong thing, and then it'll come in squashed. Go ahead, Bill.
I was going to say I went down a wrong path, but I was just thinking that Mac computers, almost all of them are resolution adjustable. So make sure that your monitor isn't set up to some weird raster. And then when you're mapping that into video, which is expecting a fixed one, it's stretching it to fit. Because you got all these, you can set your monitor for all sorts of resolutions. Make sure the resolution is one of the standard 16:9s.
Next question.
Dan Maliska, looks like, from Nelson, British Columbia. Is there a decent 24-inch monitor for around $200 to $300? If not, what is the price you might have to pay for one?
Go ahead, TJ.
Yeah, absolutely. Are very good monitors for the $200 to $300 range. I am a big fan of Dell monitors. I've got many of them, and I highly recommend. And you'll find lots of different ones in that price range.
Yeah, you can get, even for $300, you can even get a 27-inch Dell. In that price range, 4K 27-inch Dell is totally a doable thing. Paul?
Yeah, Discount Computers right here in Austin. They do a booming mail order business. They have incredible prices. It's not an advertisement. I have no connection with them, but you can get some great deals.
I will underline my rules when buying a monitor. Has to have a C13. That's the 3-prong that you would see in the back of your computer. Has to have one. I can't have don't ever buy a one with a brick on the outside. Number 2 is it has to have a Visa mount. So 4 little screws on the back. It can be 75 millimeter or 100 millimeter, but do not buy monitors without that Visa mount. And then the last one just has to have HDMI input. I know that sounds like you'd absolutely be sure that it would, but we've actually bought monitors that are only DisplayPort, and it's just like, it's a little hell that I would because every computer you're just like, oh my gosh, I can't figure out how to plug into this thing. Go ahead, Rupert.
So yeah, +1 on Dells. Depends what you're looking for. If you want just something that isn't 4K and isn't going to give you loads of amounts of color grading stuff, and you just want maybe something 1080p for utility monitors, I recommend the Dell E24 20HX. It's $169.99. It has one DisplayPort. It is available in one HDMI. It is available in the DisplayPort version. Also, if that's what you want, it has the Visa, it has the C13. The power button is on the front, not around the side where you may not be able to get to it once you've mounted it. Doesn't have a whole load of USB ports. It's nice and simple. I recommend staying with Dells because you get to know them ergonomically. You get to know the menu systems and where the ports are when you reach around the back. But that's a good one if you just want a simple setup.
Good, TJ.
If you wanted to actually go larger, I've got a couple of LG 32-inch monitors that are not ultra 4K resolution. It's the 2560 by 1440, I believe it is, and $250. It meets all the criteria. So you can get good monitors in that price range.
Next question.
Comes from Matt Wood in Newcastle upon Tyne in England. Alex, what is the secret for getting such smooth edges in your Telestrator?
So I have very smooth edges on my Telestrator. I'm glad you noticed it because I spent a lot of time working on that. So there's actually the app that I wrote has all I have control of is thickness and blur. So what I'm doing to get that is that I'm actually blurring I blur just a little bit of my, it doesn't look blurry when I draw on it. And that's because I'm using my keyer in my ATEM to tighten the solution. So in the keyer where I put, let me see if I can pull this out here. I don't know if I can show it to you. Let's see, I'll just draw a little bit here. No, I won't be able to show that to you. Oh, I know what I can do. Hold on. So, sorry, this will just take me a second to, I should have prepped. Let's see. I'm going to cut to, all right, so in here, what you'll see is if I go to my, I don't know where what am I missing here? Oh, there it is. I don't like the way this thing, I just don't like the way this thing works. Anyway, so what you're noticing here is there's a clip and a gain in the key. And so if I do a circle here, if I, see how I can make it thicker and thinner by changing that clip. And so by playing with these, I can play with the nature of it. But what the blurred image that goes in is essentially giving me a ramp to kind of play with. So I can play with how that key works by just using these two tools to make it either harder, smaller, with softer edges. All those things I have control over in the keyer. And so you can do that if you're using an art program. You can basically just use some kind of soft brush, and then once that soft, it'll look weird when you put it in as raw. Like if I cut to, let's see, if I cut to the actual image here, and I draw on this, and then I let's see here. I went to full screen now. I can't get it out of full screen. Hold on. There we go. And it's in a monitor that I can't. was trying to do that in my split screen. So if I turn off so that's what this is what the raw one looks like, right? So you can see that it has just a little bit of softness to it. And that softness is what kind of gives me a grip to kind of move things in and out to make that work. Anyway, so that's how that works. Next question.
Moving on, Scott Mueller is up next, and Scott is in Clinton Corners, New York. Let me fire the next question button here. Okay. I have local ISO records that a colleague is recording offsite on several computers. His MP4s are 1920 by 1140 and 3.58 megabits per second, and 1680 by 1140 and 2.14 megabits per second. I've tested changing display res on my computer and always have a 1080 by 720 MP4. What causes the upscale on his end? And he is using IMAX.
So what that sounds like, I don't know about the 1080 by 720. That's a really odd number, but I can tell you that the 1920 by 1140, they may be related, is that your computer generally wants to be 16 by 10, not 16 by 9. And so you're going to get more resolution if you do a screen capture at full screen, you're always going to get a 16 by 10 image. The way to fix that is to get they have these little, I don't have them off the top of my head, but in Amazon, you can buy a HDMI emulator. And you put that HDMI emulator into your computer, and then you mirror. When you do that, it will force your computer to 1080p, even on a laptop or anything else. What it thinks of as the display will now be 1080p. And then at that point, you can capture full screen, and you'll get a 1080p signal instead of a 16. You get a 16 by 9 symbol instead of a 16 by 9 signal, as opposed to a 16 by 10 signal. But that's the problem you're dealing with there. Next question.
Comes from Paul Wallace here in the panel for many, many months in Austin, Texas. How do I get my Zoom Live Talk L8 mixer to talk to my Mac Mini M8 so I can use my Shure SM58? Troubleshooting steps. And the Mac Mini M1 it's an M1, not an M8. And yes, I installed the drivers and did a reboot.
And have you confirmed that those drivers are compatible with the M1? Do we know?
Bingo. I have not.
Yeah. Bingo. I mean, still there's a lot of things that are moving targets there. So it's uncertain whether that software, a lot of the software isn't done yet. I mean, even though Apple gave everybody warning, no one did it until it wasn't working. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Well, the first troubleshooting step is to make sure that it's getting into the board, and you're seeing the meters go up and down with the SM58 before you even get it to the Mac.
Affirmative,
Mac
Jeffrey.
And the
meters are going up and down.
Do you have an Intel Mac?
I have a Mac Mini. I had an M8. It's not an M8. It's an M1.
No, but I'm saying, but is that the only Mac you have?
No, I have an Intel Mac also.
Right. So I would test it with the Intel Mac. If it works with the Intel Mac with the same drivers and doesn't work with the M1, then most likely the driver is not compatible. With it, it's not done yet. That's how
great troubleshooting tips. Thank you.
Yep. Next question.
Marcus Lefouk, and coming to us from the islands down in the Bahamas at Trinidad and Tobago, says, Alex, do you use DVS on each of the B-Link / Mac Minis for Zoom audio, or do you use Avios or some other Dante hardware to get the audio? And does the latency from DVS affect audio sync in a setup like this?
So we're currently using DVS for all of that. I have to admit that I probably, if I did it again, and DVS is relatively inexpensive and easy, I probably would have used the Avios in the future, a USB to Dante, mostly so that I wouldn't have to deal with lots of licensing and knowing whether it'll work, and I can plug it into any computer and it just works. I'd rather have, I'm not ready to invest in that now because I've already spent so much time on the DVS, but I think that I would rather have USB outputs that are used so that I can plug in any computer and I don't have to worry about whether I have AVS on it, and it just is an external solution. But right now we have the AVS and it's been working pretty well. I guess the only thing I would give up there is I would have a limited number of IO. I think I have a lot more IO right now because of the AVS situation. So I think that, but yeah, we're using AVS for everything. And we have discovered while our early shows worked fine for what we needed it for, that the B-Links are really, until you start buying a pretty beefy B-Link, you are limited to 720p as, so be careful with that. That, you know, we're going to probably move the B-Links that we have to other work in the office and go back to Mac Minis. Because by the time you get the B-Links that are powerful enough to get 1080p, we're now within $100 of a M1. So we're kind of going to probably move back to the M1s for that process. Next question.
Comes from our friend Sky Gleason from Seattle, who's not here right now. Is the V1 version 1 Rode Go able to see single ring 1/8 inch or 3.5 millimeter TRS for the use of a mic for talent for IFB? Is there an adapter to recommend if it doesn't, from single ring to stereo plug?
That adapter is super. Those are very common. I usually have them in a bag, like in my house. I think I have a couple of them laying around here somewhere. But you want to generally have, you know, TRS or TS to TRS and TRS to TS little converters. Just you can buy them off of Amazon there, or you can buy them off of Monoprice for like $1. Literally, like they're $1.56 or something, or maybe 87 cents, something like that. Some insane number, and they work fine. Go ahead, Mickey.
So yeah, what Sky's trying to do is use a Rode Go the other way around as an IFB transmitter and receiver system. With the first version of the Rode Go, the receiver's output shorts the tip and the ring because it's just a single mono feed, and the sleeve is ground. The IFB that the in-ear earpiece that Sky is trying to use with it is shorting the ring and the sleeve together.
Oh.
And the tip is where the signal comes in. Tip and sleeve is ground.
So
what's ending up happening is all three lines are being tied together, and that's the issue that he is running into.
That's a soldering problem, I think.
Yeah. So a quick way to solve it would be quick for some people would be to chop it off and tie the proper lines together. Another one is to get an adapter.
Yeah, but that adapter is complicated because that's a TS.
Or to
that's
call
a TS.
call your friend Guy to run over today with a Bumblebee Sidekick and a Rode
There
Go
we
2,
go.
and then we'll solve the problem. And that's what we'll do.
You could
Cheaper
solder
and
it.
faster solution.
You could solder it, or you could just call Guy. Hey, Guy, we've got some leftovers after the show. They're going to be really good. They're chicken. So anyway, that's great. Thanks, Guy. Thanks for solving that for us. It's a little painful without it. Next question.
Comes to us from Christian Olivier, and I believe it's Hellesine, Belgium. I heard a few times here that Zoom is better for bringing remote talents in than WebRTC. Could you elaborate on the rationale for this and the pros and cons of each?
Primarily, our experience with WebRTC is that it works most of the time, but not all of the time. And so traversing complex networks tends to be a little bit more complicated. Also, it requires more work on the far end. So if you send them anything other than I'm going to open up my laptop and make it work, you now have to go into the browser and you have to define what mic you're using. And you have to, now if someone has something on the other end that'll solve that, that's fine. But that's been a big problem for us. But the biggest problem we've had is that about, I'd say 4 or 5% of the time, and maybe the kind of people that we bring into these events, we can't see them. Like they can't get there from here. And so on WebRTC, and then we open up Zoom and it works fine. So that's been, for us, that's been the issue. Go ahead, Leo.
Yeah, I think that's it. There's a lot of people who have already used Zoom, so the barrier of getting them on the screen has been reduced because they've already done 80% of what you want them to do.
Yeah.
In terms of what actually ends up coming out of the other end is whether you say WebRTC or Zoom are better. I actually haven't seen much of a difference personally if it's set up correctly. If I'm talking about something like OBS Ninja or vMix Call, in fact, I find vMix Call better in some extent because I can control and manipulate the person better than I can when I'm bringing them in Zoom. But when you're dealing, as I deal with politicians, I actually literally have 20 seconds before they go live, some of them. And it's like, this will work. And I don't need them screaming at me.
Well, and the other thing is that I have to admit, beyond all of that, on onboarding, our onboarding green room prep process, all built into Zoom, is something that is way beyond anything we've seen with our. We're using. We did an event recently where, we have, you have the people are coming into the main room, and then we had little boxes or little rooms that we made for every label. So this is like, or not label, but distribution. So it's like Pandora and Spotify and so on and so forth. And then we had a stage, and that's where an artist is and their label, right? And they're all just hanging out over there. When people come in here, we're then pushing them into their respective rooms. They can all hang out with their colleagues. And then when it's their turn, we swing them into this, into here, and it's all seamless. And so the thing is beyond just the video works or not works. When you start really taking advantage of the things that the rest of the Zoom pipeline makes possible, being able to do all of that and manage everybody and move them around and bounce them in and out, way more advanced than anything that we're getting from just a vMix call. Like we're able to just put them into things, and none of that's all managed on my end or in the cloud or anything else, just in Zoom, and you're just moving them from room to room. And so it becomes just from a creature comfort perspective, it's a superior solution as well. Next question.
John Pruitt here in the panel from Huntersville says, has anyone used a Zense Labs, and it's spelled XENCELABS, pen tablet? It's an interesting looking new tablet with great reviews that was created by former Wacom employees, significantly less expensive than Wacom 2.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, it comes with two pencils or pens, that one wide, one thin. It's about $280 for the basic version. If you want to, you can get a bundle version with like the control surface for like $370. It looks to be, the reviews I've seen have been like, this is the one you get now. So I just wanted to see if anybody had any experience with it. Not that I'm looking to buy a new tablet, but I want to keep it in mind for whenever I do want to replace it.
And is there any, there is no version that has a screen in it, right? It's just
no.
flat. Yeah. Go ahead, TJ.
Do you know, I see here that it lists a battery duration of like 16 hours. Do you have to charge it? I'm curious about that.
So it does have a wire that you can use. It does have a dongle like the Wacom Intuos does as well, because Bluetooth just sucks for pen control. The only person that's done that right's been Apple.
Go ahead, Charles.
Yeah. I was art directing a project a few weeks ago, and one of the designers I'm working with bought it and compared it to his very high-end tablet. He really likes it. He said for the money, it's excellent. You can't beat it right now. The only problem that he has was that it comes in the pen. There's a third button that is round, and just from his functionality, he was having issues with that, just trying to use it in a very functional way. That's the main concern that he had. But he did speak to some of the people from the company, and they are developing one with a display.
Oh, good.
So they are going to be going out after that higher end market. But for the price right now, it seems to be like the best competition.
The hard part right now is with the display for let's say a 16-inch display. The upper limit right now is $450. Like that is you can't, for that size, because so many Chinese manufacturers kind of came in and even forced Wacom to rethink their pricing. Like I'm still buying Wacoms because I still feel like they'll probably last a little longer. But I think that there's a lot of innovation in that area. So it's really hard for a company to I priced it out because I was looking at building my own displays for a variety of reasons. That's a really hard market. Like making displays with touchscreens is super complicated and expensive. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, they're saying that these people aren't really pushing them that hard on price. It's more about features that you're getting for the money, like shipping 2 pens with it instead of 1, and having this outrigger control surface. They're like, these are new innovative concepts. And so admittedly it is cheaper. Don't get me wrong, because you kind of have to when you're starting out in this space. But it's just interesting to see that they're actually pushing Wacom on innovation as well.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting to see, how people interact with it, because I know some artists don't want to ever have their pen in front of the screen. They always want to just be doing what they're doing on a pen and not looking at it. I have to look at it. I've been using a pen some version of a pen since 1992. So I've been doing it, and I started all without screens and moved to screens in about 2008, 2010, and can't go back. Like if I don't have a screen, I can't use it anymore, or I don't want to use it anymore. Go ahead, TJ.
Well, I am possibly in the market for a new tablet because my old Wacom tablet, which is more than 10 years old, won't work with my newer computer. So they last so long that they become obsolete.
Right. That's great. Next question.
Our friend Talak Miguel Lopez Waterman here in the panel today says, has anyone had the experience on Zoom where a meeting attendee can only be heard by some but not others?
Whoa. That's super scary. Yeah, that's kind of stuff that keeps us up at night. John?
We had that happen at a corporate event the other day where one of the speakers could not be heard by some of the attendees, and nobody knows what caused that. So this is not a unique situation.
Yeah.
This was our introduction of our new CEO where that happened. So.
Wow. Yeah, that's a red flag, big red flag. Rupert, and then Leo, and then Talak.
So I haven't seen it, but some troubleshooting steps that come to mind is make sure everyone's wearing headphones, or at least try that, and make sure there's no open speakers. Somebody's got some noise cancellation setting that somebody else hasn't. Try with original sounds on and off, and then get somebody who can hear everyone to give some feedback on whether everybody else is at the same level. Maybe they're just below something and they're not coming through some kind of gate somewhere.
Yep. Go ahead, Leo.
I can't find it now, but I'm pretty 90% sure that there was a notification this week to say that there was a fault on Zoom. Anybody who gets the notifications exactly the same, you know when you went to try go live on YouTube, about half an hour later there was a notification to say that it was broken.
I got that too.
But there was one. I'm sure I saw a notification saying something about people not being able to hearing people. I think Jeffrey may know more.
Talak.
So we're peeling back the layers of failure on a project. And so there were other things going on. And so what I've asked the producer to do is to reach out to the people who had problems and ask for more details. But I'm really glad I asked, because it sounds like there's some people that have heard a little bit about this. But it may be, and I'm wondering if this could be a fact where it was only going in one channel, and only those people who only had one speaker potentially, and were only listening to one side.
Well, so I will tell you that we had an issue recently where for a variety of reasons, I turned stereo on, and my routing, for whatever reason, because I was doing a bunch of mic stuff, my routing on my Scorpio was set to stereo, and it was only going through left channel, and some people could hear me fine, and some people it was all beat up because and it was whether their own system was set to stereo or mono became an issue as well. And so we did see an issue there too. We're running out of time. Let's keep moving. Next question.
Moving on to Leo Mendel of London, who is in with our next question. And Leo says, a question in the week paraphrased, is YouTube a necessary gateway for people finding office hours? In looking at the approximate average views per show, it's around 1K. Do you know how many are on Mukana or native to YouTube?
I don't actually, I have to look at Mukana, but I don't think that, I think that the vast majority of folks that are watching, you have to remember that, so we're at about 3,700 people that are in the mailing list. So there's a lot of people that know that it's happening. There are, I can look at Mukana to see where they are as far as desktop or so on and so forth. And then there's a lot of people that come. So in that pool, I guess when I look at the statistics of YouTube, less than 5% are coming from any kind of YouTube referral. It's all from some external link, which means it's coming from us. So YouTube is providing very little impact on our viewership. I use it mostly as an archive tool. Like, I'm not trying to promote it that heavily. I mean, it's an easy place for me to send people on Mac breaks so that they can see it. But if I moved away from YouTube, I would I would have something public. I'm not saying I'm going to make all the videos private. I would just have it be something that wasn't on the platform. But I think it would affect me very little. So that's the reason. I don't think I'm getting that much out of YouTube. Go ahead, Leo.
I think the thing is that it's a gateway, and I've seen this with everything. If you remove yourself from these public places, you always need somewhere that's very easy for someone to say, "Here I am," new person. And what I'm noticing with your figures are slowly going up on YouTube, from what I can work out. I mean,
but so are the figures. So are the number of people registering to office hours.
Exactly.
By a couple hundred.
But I think my gateway in was that I was told about this on another program, and then I was given the YouTube link, and then once you find the YouTube link, you then find your way in, and once you're in, you probably abandon the YouTube connection. But it's that gateway, and I think if there isn't, that was the bit that I think is important.
I think that if I had a website, which is going to be soon, I promise, because I have to. I have to. Look, there's a big reason I have to. So if there was a website, you would be pushed towards the website. The website would describe what it is and everything else, and then there'd be access to all the videos there, and we wouldn't need to necessarily use YouTube to do that. And it could get deeper. For instance, if we start indexing all the answers, and then there's a searchable, the SEO is reasonably good in that area to bring people in. So, so there's a bunch of things that we could do in that area that would allow you to do some more interesting things than what we get out of YouTube. So I don't have any problem with YouTube, and I don't care about a lot of the things around it. It's not like there's some religious thing that I have about YouTube or no YouTube. It really has to do with the fact that I think I can provide a better solution, and I will be hobbled by the YouTube interface to continue to innovate. And so it hasn't been a problem yet, but it will be as we move forward. Now, next question.
This guy named Alex L, who stops by occasionally from what the pronunciation guy says is New Vatu, I believe, California. Does anyone have a favorite Atomos headphone choice under $2,000?
So I'm not looking for one under $200. And what I mean by that is that there are, I believe there's some with a lot of good drivers and actual multiple little speakers and so on and so forth, but I just don't know which ones are good or great, for that. And I think I've stumped the crowd. Go ahead, TJ. I knew that TJ would have it. I was just going to ask TJ, but then I was like, I'll put it up there.
Well, I don't have the answer, but I know who you can ask. Give Patrick Norton a shout. He is like Mr. Headphones.
Okay, I'll talk to Patrick. I'll ping him, right? We're going to go a little over because we're a little behind, but go ahead, and if you're an educator, go ahead and raise your hand. Next question.
Sky Gleason from Seattle, and here in the panel this morning, says, on Monday, I may be transitioning from an ATEM Pro to an ATEM Extreme ISO. What's the latest ATEM control software, and are there other issues to connect it to my 2019 Mac laptop running Catalina as an OS?
You can always go to the software stays the same between all of those. You can always go to Blackmagic's software and support, Blackmagic support, and then click on Switcher, and then look at the latest one. And the latest one has been out for a little while, and I'm using it, and it works fine. So I haven't had any issues. Next question.
Charles Klein here in the panel from New York City. Any suggestions for a mount/case with quarter 20s for the new 12.9-inch XDR iPad Pro?
It hasn't even come out yet. I don't know. I imagine that they'll be out by June. TJ.
Hey, Bill, don't you have a thing that sort of clamps onto your iPad that you use?
Actually, there's a couple of them. There's a company called Ulanzi that makes them, and they have a plastic and a metal model, and it's a really long clamp with a quarter 20 on the bottom that works really well. So look up ULANZI, and they have solutions.
And I haven't bought some for a long time, but my favorites for a long time were a company called Monitors in Motion, and it looks like they're still there. And they, and then they have an adjustable clamp for iPads. Wow, it's really adjustable, and it's got with a baby pin. So anyway, we equipped one of our schools with all of these. These are, in my opinion, the nicest. I can't afford them for everything, but if you're looking for like Cadillac it feels like it's just floating in space, and you can just kind of like pull it towards you and push it away. That is the monitors in motion arms are the best in my opinion. Go ahead, Charles.
Yeah, I've learned to get a case to cover all the edges. I've done that with all my small monitors that I attach to cameras. You know, people carrying stuff every so often. I'm trying to protect that screen as much as I can. So once I put it in a case, a shell, or whatever it is, it's not coming out. So I'm looking forward to something like that.
Yeah. I think the one that we got for the ones we've used it's called the table lift from Monitors in Motion. It clamps on, and it just feels like, and it's pretty rock solid. So and I think it's adjustable, but not inexpensive. But it's awesome. About like 20 or 30 of them, maybe 40. So next question.
Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas is getting very, very philosophical on us. Are we living in a simulation?
Go ahead, Rupert.
Ignorance is bliss, and there is no spoon.
Good answer.
I think the only thing I have to say about that is that, like anybody who thinks we know what we know how this all turns out is that, just remember that the scientists will tell you that 73% of everything we can measure is dark matter. That's the stuff that we don't know anything about. And then there's another 23% is cold dark matter, which is the cold version of the stuff that we don't know anything about. So everything that we can measure so far is 4%, 4% at best. So when you look at it and all those stars and everything tell us to see, 4%. Now, I will say that if I was a coder, I would say that really looks like the GUI as opposed to the code. So anyway, or something else. But the point is that something else is, I think programming, calling it a simulation would be a very simplistic version of what it might be. But thinking that our world is the whole world it would be also extremely simplistic. So go ahead, Leo. I think there's probably a couple dimensions going on.
I would only argue that Paul has been here about 14 times more often than everyone else because he's done everything 100 times more than the rest of us.
I do think that he might have lived a couple lives. Yeah, so he might be in a few dimensions at the same time. He might be that might have been a guided question. Like he already knows. He's already been there, and he's just coming back. So, all right, next question.
He's got his ears on.
Yeah. Jim Hankins of Chesterfield, Michigan's up next with, beside using a Bird Dog keyboard for pan tilt zoom control, what else are people using to control their Bird Dog PTZ cameras in an ATEM production environment?
Okay, we're going to go super fast here. I want to close this up. Go ahead, Leo.
Always, I do presets and then Stream Deck.
Next question.
Talak Miguel Lopez Waterman back in with, there are a few people in our office hours group who have been flickering on ATEM Mini when connecting the controls software on a USB on a PC. What's the best way to bring this behavior to the attention of Blackmagic?
I didn't even know it was happening. Go ahead, Rupert.
I'd just say whenever you're trying to bring a physical problem to the attention of a manufacturer, take a 30-second video. Just put the iPhone up, explain what's happening so they can see it, and then get it to them somehow.
The more you can isolate the problem and repeat it, the faster it gets fixed. So it's not like, oh, it's flickering. It's flickering when there is always, with all this, with everything that goes wrong, there's always a series of steps that cause the behavior. And until you can, I don't even bother to start calling people until I can repeat those steps. Until it's a repeatable problem, I kind of just say, well, I got to figure this out. So as soon as you can say, I open it up, I'm on this version with this firmware, I open it up and I go 1, 2, 3, and it breaks. When you do that, next update, it'll be fixed because they just look at it and that's just a check mark for them. Go ahead, Talak.
Really fast. We've seen this across multiple users now, and it happens exactly the same way. So that's how we should get it to them. So.
Yep, absolutely. Last question for the first hour.
Mike Dean, Arlington, I believe Virginia, might be Texas. A question, I have an ATEM Mini Extreme ISO and 2 stream bridges, one from Blackmagic and the other from Raspberry Pi. I'm trying to stream from OBS to the Blackmagic one. Have you tried the Pi one works? The Blackmagic, I guess, doesn't.
It's a complicated question. What I'm interested in is that the Pi works and that the Blackmagic Stream Bridge doesn't.
He's trying to get the feed out of OBS though, so I don't know if that will work with the Blackmagic streaming bridge.
Right.
I think that I think it's designed to work specifically for the ATAM Mini.
Right. Yeah. Roscoe.
Yeah, I remember that they have it locked down a little bit, so I don't think they want people to stream to it from devices other than ATEMs.
Oh, I see. They're streaming from OBS to the Pi and OBS to the Blackmagic ones. Yeah, I don't think the Blackmagic ones will work. Be pretty well locked in. All right, so we're going to take. We're running a little late. Constantly like just a little bit there. So we're going to take 10 minutes so that I can do a reset here and that we can give everybody time to do mic checks. If you're an educator that wants to jump on the panel, please raise your digital hand, and then we'll bring you up, and we'll go from there. So let's go ahead and jump into mic checks. Mickey, if you can just do the mic checks, then we'll take over the editing after that.
Cool.
Okay, great,
do we kill YouTube?